Welcome back. My name is Robert Wolf. I'm an asset coach and tax strategist. I'm the CEO and founder of Terra Firma Business and Financial Consultants. And our channel is geared on the focus of small business owners. And our topics and our content are about what we call the economic termites. These are, we obviously understand what a termite is, and you know you have a termite problem when the damage has been done. So economically, we have 5 major termites. And we talk about 4 of them in the book right here, Economic Termites: inflation, taxes, time, laws and regulations, and the 5th termite is debt, which is not in the book. But our channel is geared towards those 5. How do those things occur? What does it mean to you as a business owner? And so what we like to do is provide content specifying what those termites are and really finding out what's the government saying? What's the information that the regulatory bodies are saying that really affect those termites? Now, of the 5, we believe that laws and regulations, our lawmakers, are our worst termites. They make decisions that affect inflation, taxes, time, debt, and all the things that we do in our life. And so by understanding the things that are being said in the public, which is why we go through various articles. And so today I'm going to go through an article, and you go ahead and feel free to go through our channel, look at some of the other articles we talked about in the past. What we're trying to do is read between the lines, give you the information that is really being said in the article, what's really being said by these the politicians and the regulatory bodies, so you as a business owner have a little bit of more information to figure out how do you run your business to be proactive and to really focus on how to plan for these issues and these things that pop up. So what today's article is going to be about is, I'm going to go ahead and minimize my screen, is national debt will increase by 24% if Build Back Better Act provisions made permanent. And so this is from the Daily Wire, and what you're going to find is we're going to go through this article, we're going to highlight certain things, excuse me, and really commentate on some of the aspects in the articles that we find that are valuable and important for you as a business owner to understand. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please feel free to go down, hit the subscribe button, hit the little gray bell so that way you get notified as we update more content and provide more information. Now, these articles, I will tell you, are usually anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. And the reason why is that the article usually is about a 4-minute read. But what we want to do is go through and read between the lines. There's more meat and information on this bone, and we want to make sure you have that information for you. So let's go ahead and dive into this right now. Let's see here. I'm going to increase the size so it's a little bit easier to read. Oops, that's a little bit too much. There we go. Okay. So new analysts predict that the national debt will increase by 24% of the provisions of the Democrat social spending bill are made permanent. Now, let me tell you this. So the Daily Wire is a more conservative type focus news outlet. And I will tell you the 24% is, they're going to try to show information here that supports that. But as you and I know, when you're talking about $1.7 trillion, $1.75 trillion. Okay, think about that. That's pretty close to what the budget was before COVID. Okay, now they're talking about a spending bill just for this. Okay, on top of all the money they spent in the last couple of years. Okay, so now it contains many provisions that the president's economic agenda would introduce or expand various federal programs, including universal preschool. What the heck is universal preschool? I believe the majority of the kids go to preschool already. I believe the majority of kids have the choice, parents have the choice of public or private, but I'm not sure what universal preschool, and quite honestly, I'm a little fearful of that when the government's talking about something to that aspect. Child care subsidies and climate change initiatives. And whether you believe the climate change or not, I personally believe it's more of a political agenda than anything. The earth is always evolving, and we are part of that, no matter whether we're a part of it or we're not. Dinosaurs, they didn't have cars or spaceships, and what happened to them, right? So I think, scientists have shown that the plates in the earth have move and shift and adjust, and that there's changes that occurs. But anyways, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole just yet. So Penn Wharton Budget Model, a nonpartisan public policy research initiative at the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School, evaluated the legislation under two sets of assumptions. Okay, so we'll go through the first one and then we'll go through the second one. If the Build Back Better Act programs expire without renewal from Congress, the analysts foresee a modest impact upon debt. Okay, now first of all, anytime you put debt into the government, it's not going to be a modest impact. Then the reason being is, what's the bottom line? Who pays for this debt? You and I, taxpayers, right? Any debt the government has, current debt or future debt, is our responsibility as taxpayers and or our children and grandchildren. So I'm not a big fan, even though this is a conservative, tends to be more of a conservative type news channel. I don't like the words that are usually being used, okay? Because you and I understand that there is no modest impact, okay? The reality is that it's going to impact us significant. That's the point of this article, right? So in the first scenario, they present the spending and revenue provisions as written in the legislative text, where certain provisions sunset at 10-year budget window. Now, what that means is that they don't exist. So it's only a 10-year period that this particular rule or budget is enforced. And then afterwards, it goes back to what it was previously. Now, if you're creating something new, as we know, when the government creates something new, they're not just going to ignore it or go away from it, right? It's typically they continue on, which is part of the comment or the topic of modest impact, is that we know these things build upon each other. Under this scenario, we project that the long-run trajectory of public debt would be 1.5% larger and the GDP would be 0.2% lower, okay, in 2050. Now, that's not a 10-year span from now to then. Okay, so we're in 2022, right? That's 28 years that we're talking about in this projection. So right off the bat there, I'm a little confused at what we're talking about here. But you and I know that when we're talking about public debt, look, they're adding 1.75 trillion in this budget. The reality is that you look 10 years ago, 1.75 trillion was not a budget item. Okay. And so, 28 years specifically was not, okay. When we're looking at 28 years, we're talking in the late 90s. Okay. So if the Build Back Better Act provisions are extended, the national debt would balloon as economic outputs decline. So under the secondary scenario, we assume that trajectory provisions of the proposal are extended permanently, which I think is more accurate, right? We find that against baseline projections, government debt would be more than 24% larger in 2050, okay? 24% larger. I will make the argument that I would probably venture to say it's going to be larger than the 24%. The GDP would also be 3% lower in the same year. My guess is that it would eventually be a lot lower. We're talking about in 2050, so 28 years from now. You look at today, 28 years, I'm going to say it's probably lower. Another report from the committee: as long as the current regulatory bodies and administration continue to push out these social agendas that they do. Now, if we allow the free market and capitalism to reign, we will find economic growth, and these issues are non-issues, right? But I think that's obvious. As a small business owner, I think the majority of us believe that already. So another report from the Committee for the Responsible Budget, Federal Budget, said that the true cost of the bill may be $4.9 trillion due to the number of arbitrary sunsets and expirations. I think this is probably more accurate. So you got 1.75 trillion. That's going to turn into 4.9 trillion. To my point earlier, is that when a government creates some kind of, a department or a budget line item, it's very rare that all of a sudden just poofs and goes away. All right, it expands because now you got to maintain whatever you created, or you got to improve or fix, or right. There's always an issue, so to speak. The group argued that it is in present state, the Build Back Better Act will increase federal budgets by $800 billion over the next 5 years and $200 billion through 2031, which is 10 years. I do believe it will actually balloon greater than that. You have seen over the last couple of years how easy it was for the government to dole out money, yes, in the name of pandemic, but the reality is that they either lowered taxes or they printed money or gave away or something that affected dollars. And these are issues that we as taxpayers have to deal with, not just today, but later on. If the provisions of the legislation are made permanent, deficits would rise by $3 trillion over the next 3 decades. I agree with this. I would imagine that it's not going to be $3 trillion. I would imagine it's probably going to be closer to $4 to $6 trillion. I have no mathematical proof of that other than proof's in the pudding. Look at history and look what governments decided. And I'm not gonna say liberals versus Republicans, Democrats, Republicans, or anything like that, conservatives. I'm not talking about either side of the aisle or middle of the aisle. I'm just talking about in government in general. It's normal for government to grow. And that's and there should be some sort of growth in government when the economy does expand. There is certain things that need to be regulatory issues and certain guidelines that need to be made. I totally get that. The Wild Wild West does not continue today as it did back in the Wild Wild West days. I get that. I understand that. I'm not saying that there should be no government. I'm not saying there should be all government. There is a happy medium. And I think the happy medium allows us as taxpayers and citizens to choose the things that we want to. The goal of the government is to make sure that infrastructure is there for us to have commerce, to live and have the lifestyle and do the things that we can do. The goal of the government is to protect the citizens, meaning the military, and making sure our borders are protected and that there's peace not just in our country but around the world, right? These are some of the main functions of the government, right? And to negotiate trade and negotiate certain aspects with other countries. That's the basics of politics. It's been from the very beginning to now. We get that. We understand that. And we also know that politics has expanded beyond that, and that's where our issue lies, right? So in an interview with Jimmy Fallon, I'm not sure why Jimmy Fallon all of a sudden is the main interviewer of the current president, but either way, he said the current president, every single bit of this bill is paid for. Lie 1, not and will not increase the deficit 1 penny. Lie number 2, though he will argue that the Build Back Better Act would not raise taxes. Lie number 3. Okay, on anyone under 400,000. Now, what's interesting to me is how politicians don't understand, or maybe they do understand, and they just lie to not care, that there is trickle down. Okay, so they may make a decision right now. So, for example, I may have a good thought and idea I want to water the plants. I turn on the water. I can turn on it full blast. I can turn it on to drip. Either way, if I don't turn that water off, what's going to happen to my plants in the planter? It's going to flood, whether it's a drip or full blast. Okay? That's the bottom line in the issue. And that's what we're talking about here, is that whether they think it's a drip change or a blast, it's going to still affect. You cannot say the act will not raise taxes. Part of the act is raising taxes. But under 400,000, it will affect them. The goods and the services they purchase from the other areas of the government or the entities that taxes are higher. It's just the way it is. The Tax Policy Center found that many middle-class income households may pay more in taxes as time passes. And that is true. And the Tax Policy Center is a nonprofit, separate, nonpartisan type entity. Taking into account all major tax revisions, roughly 20% to 30% of middle-income households would pay more taxes in 2022. Okay? So I'm not sure. That's just 1 year. That's 2021 to 2022. However, the tax increases would be very small. Okay, no tax increases to a small tax increase. What's that considered? What is small? Okay, among those with the tax increase, low to middle income households would pay an average of $100 or less on average. Those making $250,000, $200 to $500,000 would pay an average of $230. I disagree with that. and the reason being is that higher taxes does cause inflation to increase, which does cause cost of goods to increase, which does cause taxes to increase. They're not separate; they are together. They do affect each other. In general, the combined effects of these changes would result in many households paying higher taxes in 2023 than in 2022. Yes, it would. Of course it would. We know that. They would shrink the average 2023 tax cuts for lower income households, raise taxes slightly for moderate income households, and increase taxes significantly for highest income households. On social media, Tesla SpaceX CEO Elon Musk likewise shared concern over the Build Back Better implications. There's a lot of accounting trickery in this bill that isn't being disclosed to the public. Said Musk, concluding with the famous quote from the economist Milton Friedman, which President Ronald Reagan often borrowed: "Nothing is more permanent than a temporary government program." And that, unfortunately, speaks truth. That is the issue. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, this is for your information, trying to read between the lines of what's being said. If you haven't subscribed, if you like this information, and subscribe, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell so you get notified when we have contents. If you like this, hit the little thumbs up. And add a comment. Feel free to say, hey, Bob, you know what? We're interested in this type of information. Can you look for articles and share information about this? Or do you have any videos or anything content to help us understand this area? Whether it's inflation, taxes, how to buy back time. How to buy back time. We do that in our consulting and help business owners buy back time. And then how other laws and regulations, like we're talking about with this article, or how does debt affect us? Good and bad debt. How do we plan it and manage it? So once again, thanks so much. I appreciate your time and appreciate you. Continue to go out there and put the hard work in. You're blessed. You are an important piece of who we are as Americans.